Hello my lovelies and welcome to today's video. I'm going to be wrapping up the books that I read during February, bar from like 4 books because they are children's picture books, and I thought I want to do a little video where I compile all the children's picture books that I've read recently and do its own dedicated wrap up basically. So I will be admitting those 4 books, pretty sure it's 4 books, from this reading list. So the first book I am going to be talking about is The Island by C.L. Taylor, which is described as Lost meets the Hunger Games, and it's a YA thriller. We are following a group of 6 teenagers who become stranded on a deserted island. They've basically gone there for a birthday celebration, and they do have a tour guide who, under strange circumstances, passes away quite suddenly into the trip, and so they are stranded there until, well, they hope they get rescued basically. However, somebody on the island knows each of the 6's deepest fears, and they start to worry if they're going to get off the island alive after all. I ended up giving this story a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I listened to it through BorrowBox, which is my library service's borrowing app where I listen to the audiobook. And this one actually had me in mind of a combination of Lord of the Flies and One of Us is Lying in the way the story was kind of cultivated and delivered. So I quite enjoyed that. I would say it was very easy listening. It was just very Moorish and easy to fall into the story, but my goodness, there was some really dark, heavy themes, so definitely go into that, check in your trigger warnings, because I wouldn't want anyone to be kind of caught off guard by some of the topics that are discussed in some of the character perspectives. I loved the isolated atmosphere that we had in this story and the early vibes that kind of reminded me of that TV show Total Drama Island, which was such a good show. Like, I wish they'd brought that back, or did they do a rerun in the end? I don't know. Anyway, there's some cool characters in there, and I need to go back and like rewatch it because I remember watching that as a child, loving it, but maybe not appreciating it to the depth of what I would now. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I think with our characters, we are following one main kind of perspective, but I didn't find myself super hooked to any one of them in particular. It was easy for me to kind of drift in and out, but I did appreciate the fact that we did have multiple characters to kind of get an idea of what was going through everybody's head during this crazy time on this island, as well as to help kind of stir and stew that anxiety and suspicion of, if one of them was the ones that were finding out the secrets and kind of torturing them, like psychologically torturing them, who was it? So it was cool to figure out kind of who had suspicions on who, and kind of what was going on with their relationship dynamic. But in terms of like a close bond, or who I really enjoyed reading about or hearing about from a different perspective, I didn't really have like a favourite. I think that at the heart of this, there was a great takeaway from The Island, and that was kind of coming to terms with your grief and finding a way to work through it healthily, which was a theme that I wasn't expecting to stumble on going into this story. I think it's a fantastic message for all readers, but for a younger audience especially, maybe in the instance where you haven't kind of tapped into those emotions or even been taught how to do so by like a trusted adult. Anyway, recommend this book definitely. Following that, I listened to the audiobook for the 3rd book in the House of Night series by Kirsten and Peace&Cookies, which is finally getting a movie. They've recently launched an update on how that process is going, so that's super exciting. I knew there was a reason why I was called to finally pick up this series. I don't know, like something just told me to do it, and now that we're getting a movie, so I'm super excited that I'm like invested in this world. So this one is called Chosen, and of course we're following Zoe Redbird and her group of friends within the House of Night. We have dark forces that are at work at the academy, at the school, and Zoe's trying to figure out who she can really trust with some of the secrets that she has become privy to, and some of the secrets that definitely concern her. There's also the mystery of vampires turning up like actually dead, like dead, and throwing that into the whole mix of who to trust, who not to trust, general school shenanigans. It is an explosive story. I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's going to be a bit of a short and sweet review because we are 3 books in at this point. I don't want to give any spoilers to anybody. I will say is that this was such a turning point for the story, I believe. Like, there were so many plot dynamics that I almost feel like juggled on this book, and the direction that the authors were taking that story really had a pivotal moment in this. The adults in this world are creepy and gross. Reading it from an older person, like the age roughly of the character that's perpetrating some of these inappropriate relations, it just has me grossed out and deeply troubled. The pacing of Chosen was great, kept me entertained, kept me hooked as the story developed, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how Zoe comes back from the fallout of what transpired at the end of this book, and I am hoping she does a little bit of soul searching first. Next up, I read the second volume of the Miss Marvel series. This is Generation Y, and I had a little bit of hesitancy going back into this because the first volume I didn't like super love. It wasn't my favorite, but I'm glad that I continued with at least the next one, which I personally owned, because I like this a lot more than the first one. Following Kamala Khan, who is Miss Marvel, she is able to have these like transformative abilities, this stretchy bendy power. She can shrink, she can grow, all due to this kind of fog mist phenomenon that kind of awoken or manipulated her cells to have these powers. And in this particular one, she is on the hunt for a villain called the Inventor, who's been taking runaway kids and kind of doing nefarious things in the ways of experimentation. And well, you find out kind of what the root of it is all for in this volume, and I quite enjoyed the direction of this story actually. So I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars, and I really enjoyed that we had more of a linear plot to follow. It felt like there was like a beginning, a middle and an end. It doesn't feel like this arc is finished at all. Like there's definitely more that's going to be unfolded in subsequent volumes, I'm sure, but it felt like a nice structure that I was on board with, whereas the first volume just kind of felt like little anecdotes of Kamala's life, which was probably great, but because I was expecting a proper in-depth origin, it didn't feel like that to me. I'm definitely intrigued by the whole Inhuman way of things, and I loved Wolverine's cameo in this, and Lockjaw is also fantastic. But yeah, I will be continuing on with at least a couple more of these volumes. I've got some out from the library, so yeah, I won't be buying any more, but I'll be borrowing whatever's available at the library. I finally got into Spy X Family. This one's volume 2, but the one that I read was volume 1. I'm currently in the middle of this one. I do actually have a full review over on TikTok if you're interested, where I review the volume 1 in its entirety, as well as episodes 1 to 5, because volume 1 and 1 to 5 in terms of episodes are the same. So I was kind of just reflecting on the viewing experience, the reading experience, that sort of thing. But I really do like this series so far. As I say, I'm only like, well, I'm pretty much done with the main arc of volume 2. It's just bonus content now, but I'm having the best time reading this. It's so funny. We're basically following a secret spy agent called Twilight, or codenamed Twilight, who has been sent on a mission to infiltrate his next target, whose only appearances really are at this esteemed academy called Eden Academy. And in order to do this, he needs to become a family man and employ the help of a child to get into the school and a wife, which is completely different to his lifestyle, right? It is so much fun. I'm having a great time, and you can see that hard exterior of Lloyd in particular, which is his sort of like Elias, chipping away at his hard exterior as he softens up a little bit with this sham family that starts to become real in all intents and purposes. Yeah, I love this series so far. As I say, I've got a review of volume 1 already on my TikTok page if you're interested. Okay, following on, I have a backdated World Book Day, which was a good time to read it really, because World Book Day is fast approaching this month. This is Being an Ally, and it's edited by Shakira Bourne and Dana Allison Levi. And this is kind of being an ally in all forms, all purposes. An ally for the LGBT plus community, for BIPOC, for people of varying abilities. It's an ally in all like, it's intersectionality, isn't it? It's in all purposes. So this one is a collection of true stories. 7 critically acclaimed and best-selling YA authors get real about being an ally, needing an ally, and showing up for friends and strangers. So I ended up giving this one a 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. There was some super valuable content in this little book. It really packed a punch whilst simultaneously still being very digestible to absorb. I loved how it described from people's like own perspectives and point of views that this is how they would show up as an ally, how they'd want to be allied, and how that differs from like a wide group to the individual, and how it's not like a one size fits all. So yeah, I really enjoyed this, and I thought it was very, very valuable knowledge. Up next, I listened to a non-fiction this time, and that was The Book of Joy, Lasting Happiness in a Changing World by the Dalai Lama and the Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And this one I gave a 5 out of 5 stars as well. So this is about 2 great spiritual masters who are sharing their hard-won wisdom over the course of 7 days, about living with joy even in the face of adversity. And I think it was around the time when there was a big birthday being celebrated, and so it was a good time of reflection and for this conversation to be had. I thought it was a super insightful book, and it was super nourishing for the soul as well. There were some conversations in this particular book that helped to balance my perspective in comparison with the simple joys of life in the face of all the turmoil and heartbreak that simultaneously happens in the world. I thought it was beautiful. It was a ray of sunshine in a book, and it just felt like I was being uplifted, you know, as well as educated. The next 2 books I read were picture books, so as I say, I'm going to save that for a separate video, and I'm going to now move on to my final book for February, which was World War Z, An Oral History of the Zombie War by Max Brooks. This did take me a little bit longer to read than I expected it to, but let me just read the blurb for you, because I feel like it's probably going to give you more in-depth thoughts of what it's supposed to be about without me butchering it. I'll butcher it when it gets to my review. Okay. The zombie war came unthinkably close to eradicating humanity. Max Brooks, driven by the urgency of preserving the acid-etched first-hand experiences of the survivors from the apocalyptic years, travelled across the United States of America and throughout the world. Oh, I didn't realise the author was putting himself in the story as if he was the one collecting the information. That's why he was unnamed, because it was the guy on the book. Okay, that's clever. Sorry, that just went right over my head. From decimated cities that once teemed with upwards of 30 million souls to the most remote and inhospitable areas on the planet. He recorded the testimony of men, women, and sometimes children who came face to face with the living, or at least the undead. War Z is the result. Never before have we had access to a document that so powerfully conveys the depths of fear and horror, and also the ineradicable spirit of resistance that gripped human society through the plague years. Ranging from the now infamous village of Anu Dashang in the United Federation of China, where the epidemiological trail began with a 12-year-old patient zero, to the unnamed northern forest where untold numbers sought a terrible and temporary refuge in the cold, to the United States of Southern Africa, where the Redica plan provided hope for humanity at an unspeakable price, to the west of the Rockies Redoubt, where the North American tide finally started to turn. This invaluable chronicle reflects the full scope and duration of the zombie war. Most of all, the book captures with haunting immediacy the human dimension of this epochal event. Facing the often raw and vivid nature of these personal accounts requires a degree of courage on the part of the reader, but the effort is invaluable because, as Mr. Brooks says in the introduction, by excluding the human factor, aren't we risking the kind of personal detachment from history that may, heaven forbid, lead us one day to repeat it? And in the end, isn't the human factor the only true difference between us and the enemy, now referred to as the living dead? So I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I feel like this was such a monumental book to read, and I'm so glad I finally did, especially as the movie has such a large acclaim and is one that I've been meaning to watch for quite a while as well. The way Brooks creates such a rich and complex account of this zombie war through interviews and first-hand accounts felt so believable that I was left a little dazed whenever I came out of the book and having to kind of remember that that's not real, I think. I felt like the reporting style and the way the story unraveled through these kind of case studies and person by person just made it feel even more realistic and believable. It was helpful as well that the book was broken down into parts with themes that helped kind of move the story along, focusing on the conversations around the first stage of the outbreak, the blame game, you know, the defense approach of different countries, that sort of thing. I just can't get over how believable it all felt. I will say although I had some perspectives that I definitely resonated with, and honestly I feel like every inkling added something to the story, I do feel like it was a touch too long. There was a bit of repetition, which you can imagine. People are like already recounting their experience, and then you're going to get a lot of overlap, right? But it's difficult because I feel like it could have been done with a bit more pruning, a bit more editing. But then saying that, I can't really highlight the exact parts I would have cut out or merged together, because thinking back on them, I was having a great time really immersing in that person's life for however many pages they were telling the story, you know. So it was a bit of a, like, it definitely felt too long for the story that it was giving, but I can't take away from it. It was a weird feeling. Anyway, overall I thought this was a fantastic read. It's not usually my go-to type of book, but I'm so glad that I pushed myself out of my comfort zone in this instance and gave it a go, because it was thought-provoking, it was emotional, it was very rewarding, having come out of the book like in completion, and as well as that, it was entertaining. So yeah, with that, it wraps up my video for today. Thank you so much for listening in to the books that I had read during February. Let me know what you guys have been reading, what maybe were your favourite books, maybe what were your least favourite books. I would love to know. Anyway, thank you so much for spending some time with me. I shall catch you in another video soon. Bye.